My last movie review, we had by far the best movie of the year, which was Batman Soul of the Dragon, and I can tell you we now have by far the worst movie of the year, albeit this is only the second 2021 release that I have seen. Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today we have a review on Locked Down, which is a new HBO Max original. And to be honest, I didn't actually originally plan to make a review for this. I intended to watch it because in a couple of months' time when Chaos Walking is released, I'm going to do a Doug Liman ranking, and I found out last minute this was part of the movies he's directed, so I might as well watch it while it's fresh and trending. So last minute I've only just decided to make this review, but I do have quite a few things to say about it. So the synopsis for this movie, as it literally says on IMDb right there, is a couple of attempts at high risk, high stakes jewellery heists at a department store. Like, as much effort was put into that synopsis on IMDb as was put into this movie. You know what, let me just get onto my pros. I'm not gonna lie to you, before I watched this movie I did look at some reviews. There weren't many, as it was only released today as of filming. All of the reviews were negative. I couldn't really find any positive things, so I went into this trying to keep an open mind, and for the first half an hour I was questioning those reviews. Obviously I knew there was still a lot of the movie to go, in fact the majority of it, but I found some positives there. I thought the two leads, they had good chemistry together, and I really liked how realistic it felt in terms of setting it around everything with the coronavirus which is going on in England at that time. You know, me, someone who lives in England, I felt all those things when they first went into lockdown. Lockdown was extended. So I found those things really compelling, and what they did with the characters and how they struggled, because in a way I can relate. Also something interesting, I actually started my channel about the first week or so into lockdown, so coming up on a year, an anniversary now, so, but fortunately that's all I can say about pros. So now into the negatives about this movie, and as you probably saw I made a bit of a deal out of the synopsis because that's what I read. I know maybe I should look other places for their synopsises, not just IMDb. Like, now looking at Rotten Tomatoes, they have a much more in-depth synopsis, but I went into this thinking it was only like a heist thing, and I was like, just about to click start, I was like, oh, Locked Down, that sounds like lockdown. Bit of a coincidence, isn't it, that I'm in lockdown at the moment. When I watched it, and then like, one of the very first things was about England being in a lockdown. I had no idea this movie had any relation to the coronavirus. I had no idea it was set in real life events. I don't know, it's not really a negative, but I just didn't see this marketed anyway. That's kind of my fault, but that's the thing. This really is a movie of two halves. I said I really liked the first half, or the first 30 minutes. Not to the extent that it's a masterpiece, but I thought it was like a solid 6 to 7 out of 10 for that first half an hour, where we saw these two characters. Good actors, by the way, we had a really good cast here, but then the second half just completely feels like a whole different movie, where this whole heist plot emerges literally pretty much out of nothing. I mentioned in my pros that I really liked the first half because it felt really realistic with the coronavirus, with all the things going on in the UK at that time, where I could resonate with it. So that felt realistic. And then it moved into this second half of this movie where everything got chucked out the window. You know, you had these major conveniences going their way, which would never, so that's unrealistic. And overall, just everything seemed so ridiculous that it would never ever happen if this was real life. You know, I'm fine with movies consistently being like that throughout their whole runtime, but the fact that they set up everything with the coronavirus, they had potential in their hands for that first half. Now I keep going back to it. It felt really real, whereas this second half felt a bit like a child made it. As I mentioned, our two lead characters had good chemistry together. In fact, you know, they had fairly good chemistry throughout the whole thing, but as soon as things progressed into that heist thing, their characters, they became ridiculous as well. They turned into these cartoonish and laughable people. Their character, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but their character arcs felt like, not to the same extent, not to the same brutal extent, but that they went through the character arc of Walter White during those 5 seasons of Breaking Bad, because by the end they were really weird. Obviously we get to learn more about them as it goes along, but they were completely different people. Now this movie did do a few things well, like I mentioned, not a huge amount, but a few things. The rest of it was lazy and poor. Now I don't necessarily think that is 100% down to the writers and the directors, because if you think about it, the UK lockdown, the first one, which this is based around, happened last March, and it went through, you know, from March, April, May, and I think came out in June. The person writing this either started as soon as they went into lockdown and then made adjustments as announcements were made, or they waited after it to write this whole thing. Keeping in mind that we're in January 2021, so it hasn't even been a whole year since the first lockdown. Writing the movie, that should take a fair amount of time. Taking into consideration getting all the cast members, the crew, the locations, and a big thing, because, you know, we're in troubling times, the restrictions, especially with filming. I know a lot of the scenes took place inside a house, but there was still like a lot of restrictions, especially with the amount of crew needed on set. So to complete a movie which closely follows the UK lockdown announcements and all the news surrounding that in less than, well, 10 months, it's absolutely crazy. It just shows that there hasn't been that much time spent on it at all, because I'm guessing they're trying to rush it out while it's a popular thing that relates back to times then, which yes it does in the start, but then it gets ridiculous. And what I thought watching it was, that thing played on my mind that they rushed this movie, or maybe they had this heist movie planned, but then at the time of writing, or when they were about to get the crew and all that, get all the cast, start filming, they thought that was around the time that coronavirus struck, so they're like, oh, maybe I can write this into it. That's the only other option I can think. A movie with this cast, you know, on this streaming service shouldn't be made in less than 10 months. No, not just made, as in written, you know, get all the cast and crew together. It's absolutely ridiculous. So overall, this movie was a bit of a mess. I feel like they rushed it too much. They had some potential with some of the coronavirus stuff. The heist plot itself, even though that was the main thing, it felt very out of place, very brought in at the end. It really was a film of two different halves. The first half felt like a drama, the second half, people going psycho and doing a heist. It didn't even feel like that, it didn't give off that energy. It featured some good performances, you know, very enthusiastic, but they were written in a very messy and weird way towards the second half of this movie. And yeah, I just can't believe they wrote and completed this movie in about 10 months, and that's at a maximum. In terms of score, I was very unsure. I originally gave it a 54%, but then looking back at the notes and processing it more, I'm going to give this movie a 48%, so it's not a good start to the year at all with these two movies. This movie, on some terms, does make Batman Soul of the Dragon look like Oscar-worthy material though. So yeah, 66 or 65 is normally like the most average mark I can give a movie, and well, the two movies we've had so far are well on average, which is understandable, I guess, because no new releases and January content isn't normally that great, even though we were blessed with some last year with Bad Boys for Life and The Invisible Man, so let's hope that the movies get better after this. But anyways, let me know what you thought of, what was it called? The Locked Down. Yeah, it's actually hard to say, pronouncing the ED on locked. Please like and subscribe, it would really mean a lot, and I hope to see you in my next video, which is hopefully a better movie.